So the long-awaited Batman CAPED Crusader has just landed on Amazon Prime Video, and it's safe to say that it certainly didn't disappoint. With there being 10 episodes that were pretty much noir thriller themed, this take on the CAPED Crusader was one which gave us several villains and almost an anthological feel across the 10 episodes, whilst also containing a strong underpinning plot that was being developed throughout. With there pretty much being a villain per episode, I thought I'd rank every episode within this first season from worst to best. So let's get into it. Here is Batman CAPED Crusader every episode ranked. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Number 10, Episode 6, Night Ride. For me, this episode was one which felt like it was levels below the others, just in terms of the story and also the gripping nature of it. I'm not really a huge fan of Supernatural, to be honest, and when compared to every other villain in the show, the Gentleman Ghost James Craddock was probably my least favourite. With there being no physical way of Batman actually putting up a fight against him, it did just kind of feel like we were waiting for him to find out which magic needed to be used in order to defeat him, so it was a waiting game. It was kind of easy, get a bit of blood and then burn the contract, which was his claim to Gotham. The part that intrigued me most about this episode was when Craddock was inside the Boon for a Boon tube and he was petrified of going with Linton Midnight. I wish we actually got to see what he had planned for him. Number 9, Episode 7, Moving Target. Although this episode had a twist within it that occurred right at the end, I found Onomatopoeia to be a villain that never really amounted to much or felt like there was a chance that they were going to complete the task that they were assigned with doing. The twist with it being Barbara Gordon that had the hit on her and it not being her father was something that I didn't expect, but it didn't hit me with the shock factor that I think it wanted to carry out. In all honesty, I just found this episode a little bit boring to watch and like there wasn't that much excitement involved within it. It was just going through the motions. The part that I did like about it though was the contrast from the beginning to the end, where at the start Barbara felt as though civilians that committed crimes deserved a second chance and that jail wasn't necessarily the best place for them to be. However, at the end, when she was betrayed, she realised that jail was the best place for the person in front of her and that she was almost starting to see the world through her father's eyes and his perspective. Number 8, Episode 3, Kiss of the Catwoman. Like the previous 2 episodes, again, this was one that I just didn't really feel that engaged with. I liked the introduction of Miss Kyle as Catwoman, and I thought the romantic, flirty spark that she shared with Batman was handled really well. Plus, I liked the way that we saw that she took inspiration off of Batman in order to create her persona. One of the things that I liked most about this episode was the fact that we got to take a look into Bruce's past and see how the murdering of his parents was still impacting him in the present day. The part where we saw that he set out on a mission to make every person pay for their crime no matter what it was, and that being the very thing that spurred him on to want to make sure that Miss Kyle was actually caught, showed that Bruce just wanted to fight for justice, and didn't want any crime or criminal on the street no matter what the scale of it was. Number 7, Episode 5, The Stress of Her Regards. In 7th place on this list is the episode which was centered around Dr. Quinzel being revealed to be none other than Harley Quinn. This was a reveal that was right under our nose the entire time, and foolishly, I didn't actually make the connection right away. I think it's because I was just so drawn into the story in the first couple of episodes that I was just so immersed within the world. This was an episode that had some humour embedded within it, but it was one which was also quite dark too. There was a sense of betrayal, something that I quite liked as it wasn't really apparent in any of the other episodes in the season. Plus, I also thought it was creative in using people's past traumas against them and having them bend to her every word and will. It connected back to episode 3 really well when she mentioned why she wanted to keep Bruce on after he carried out his court punishment of attending therapy. I thought Harley Quinn looked really cool as well in terms of the outfit that she was wearing, and I also liked the fact that she went back for Barbara when she realised that she was parked up there. It showed a human side to her and that she wasn't just evil within, even willing to sacrifice herself at the end. However, with her surviving, I feel like she'll definitely be a character that returns in Season 2 of the show. Number 6, Episode 8, Nocturne. The placing of this episode is something that I feel is kind of right for it. It was a proper middle-of-the-road quality episode, which arrived before the 2 episodes which closed the season off in a dramatic fashion, whilst also tying into the main overarching plot. I liked the environment that the episode was set in and the carnival theme. It was a complete contrast to everything else that we'd seen, and it allowed for creativity in the supporting characters and the scenery as well. This was also where we started to see the turning point of Harvey Dent and his morals being played with and tested by Rupert Thorne, making him question which direction he wanted to go in. I know I said I didn't really like the supernatural side of the show, but I thought Natalia as a villain was pretty cool. It was quite haunting to look at when she would drain the energy from people in order to build up her own strength. I also thought when Batman didn't let her die and be lost forever due to the sun rising, it was a moment which showed an ounce of care within him. Even though she was a villain, he knew that she was a troubled individual that needed help, especially after killing her own brother. The way he just wrapped his cape around her and provided comfort was something which showed the real human side to him and the core values that he had. He wasn't just gonna let a child die. Number 5, Episode 1, In Treacherous Waters. I felt like this was a great way for the series to really kick off. I felt like it had mystery, deaths, suspicions, double-crossing, and stakes that were extremely high. This also introduced us to Robert Thorne for the first time and showed us how important of a person he was gonna be throughout the entirety of the show. I thought the Penguin was performed really well too, and I liked the sophisticated yet cunning nature that they had. The ruthlessness of her killing her own son because she felt as though he betrayed her, and also seeing her not even bat an eyelid or shed a tear over it showed just how cold of a villain she was. She could have actually probably been saved for the end of the season, to be honest. I also thought this episode introduced all of the characters to us extremely well, and it showed their mindsets and views clearly. For example, we saw that people weren't sure if Batman was even real at that point, but then they realized he was. We saw Harvey Dent doing an iconic coin flip, plus we also saw that Dent was running for mayor. So it planted all of the seeds that it needed to in its opening episode, and then as we worked our way through the series, it all started to grow and blossom. Number 4, Episode 2, And Be a Villain. I really loved this episode. I thought this was such a creative one to watch, and the detective, sleuth, noir feel that it had, with an incredible twist at the end, was something that I thoroughly enjoyed watching. Being centered around actress Yvonne Francis going missing, and the main suspect, Basil Carlo, who was once infatuated with her, being the prime suspect, but us believing he was killed, for it to then turn out that he wasn't in fact dead, but he'd been experimented on in order to improve his looks and get cast in better roles with the hopes of winning her over. It was a really well thought out journey that we went on. I also thought the performance and voice acting of Basil Carlo was just perfect. The low tone of the voice really personified a classic movie villain from back in the day, which had elegance and class to them. I thought the motive of him being bitter about his own looks and only ever being cast as a villain, for him to then become a villain in real life was great progression, and it felt really natural to watch. Him having the ability to essentially make his face look like anybody was a power that was definitely useful, and when it was revealed that it had actually been people that Montoya had spoken to and had used his acting abilities to embody their voice and personality, again, it was something that I just found to be extremely creative and entertaining. This episode also gave us a real focus on Detective Montoya, and it was probably the most screen time that we'd had with her in one specific go. This episode definitely deserves to be in the top part of the list. Number 3, Episode 4, The Night of the Hunters. The visuals in this episode is something which really made it stand out for me and allowed it to be memorable when compared to many of the others. This was also probably one of the darkest episodes in the season too, as we saw Bullock actually kill somebody and their death was one that was horrific. Firebug as a villain was one that I enjoyed watching. He had no motive whatsoever other than the fact that he was just addicted to committing arson. The shot where we saw the building on fire through his perspective was one that was simply remarkable to look at. You almost felt the heat from the flames because the visuals were just that stunning. This was also where for the first proper time we saw just how crooked Bullock and Flass were, going off on their own and being prepared to undermine Commissioner Gordon in order to gain any kind of power, which was obviously dangerous because they were working with Rupert Thorne. They killed to cover up their own tracks, so it showed that they meant business. This was also the episode where we saw the public turning against Batman, but there being a sense of loyalty and the forming of a relationship between Commissioner Gordon and Batman due to the fact that they helped each other out, something which went on to impact the finale. So this was definitely a great episode of the show. Now, the episode in first place is actually the final 2 episodes because it was almost like a two-parter. So episode 9 and episode 10 come in first place on this list, with episode 10 being the better of the two. These episodes were all about the transformation of Harvey Dent into Two-Face. Throughout the entirety of the series, we saw him not sure on how best to act, if he should side with Rupert Thorne and become corrupt in order to secure power, or if he should abide by the law. We saw that he played both sides, and that was what ultimately caused him to be harmed and get the physical deformity which rendered him Two-Face. The constant split in personality that we saw him having, the use of lighting, effects, and visuals to really show the two different sides to the character was something that I thought was the most creative thing in the entirety of the show. Harvey Dent killed in order to get revenge, but he didn't want to be a villain, and you could tell that at his core he was a good person and just wanted to do good. However, he was driven to kill because he felt he was dealt a bad side of the coin. With him sacrificing himself at the end to save Barbara, it showed that he did die a hero in some regard, as if he didn't move, then she would have been dead. I also like the fact that Batman called Pennyworth Alfred right at the end, because the line of treating staff like humans had finally become something that he realised. He lost his friend Harvey Dent, somebody that he cared for. He almost lost Alfred earlier on, and I think he now realised that he should treat the people he cares about with a different level of respect. The final shot of the entirety of the season, with Batman standing on the roof, watching over Rupert Thorne, was a powerful way for it to finish, and it showed that he's not done with trying to put him behind bars just yet. So that's a story that's definitely going to be continuing. So, there you have it. Batman Caped Crusader, every episode ranked. What was your favourite episode? Do you agree with me? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video, and I'll see you in the next one.